Hey, and welcome back to episode 49 of the Cellarcast. Gonna give you guys fair warning. It's a fighting game episode. Yep, yep, yep. It's one of those. And not really by intention, not by plan. It just so happens that there was a confluence of a couple things. No real comments, no questions today, but last episode I did talk about Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, and I got a couple comments from people who were talking about the older MK games. Man, you guys hate NRS. That's cool. I don't. I'm not a particularly big NRS fan. I'm not huge on them, but something I was noticing when I was going back and just as I don't think I mentioned this last time, or I didn't go as in depth. One of my biggest sticking points with the NRS games, the modern Mortal Kombats and the Injustices, the thing that always keeps me off of them is the the animations are a little. It's not quite that. That is a little. I mean, yes, but I think one of the things. It's the overall visual flow of the action, and I know that's I don't know exactly how to describe it, but in specific terms, there's no hit stop in those games. There's no hit stop at all, and it's really weird. I'm looking at the gameplay and I'm always trying to figure out if I try to understand my tastes and why I have certain reactions to things. So if I see something and it's giving and I'm this isn't appealing to me. Usually I know why. I'll just know why. I won't even say this doesn't appeal to me that much, but if I have to say that, then it's okay, well, I don't know why. The only reason I don't have anything specific to say is because I don't know why. So I've spent a lot of time just watching footage of NRS games, and I'm what is wrong with it? Now, besides, of course, a bunch of the weird animation stuff, I guess it all kind of ties in together. Yeah, they have no hit stop on hits. Hit stop being just when an attack connects, even on block. The game pauses for just a split second, and this is just a thing that a lot of games do actually, just in order to sell a hit. This isn't even a good comparison, but it kind of reminds me of in I think Jackie Chan one time was talking about the difference between the way that a lot of American action movies were edited versus the Hong Kong movies that he did, and he said that in American movies, when there's a hit, they cut on the hit. So, obviously, the actor is not going to, blast the other actor, full force with their fist or something. So what they do is they work it with a cut. And with American movies, they cut right as the hit lands. On the beat. Whereas in the Hong Kong movies that he did, Hong Kong action kung fu movies, they would show they would do it just a microsecond after the hit, the fist. So they would have it just close enough that the fist, you see it connect, basically touching skin, and then they cut, and then you're at the second shot, and then you see the reaction, and it gives this much heavier, weightier feel to it. That has nothing to do with hit stop, but it's got a similar in terms of technique. But I think in my mind it has a similar effect. It's the way that it's presented to give it a little bit of little oomph, so that it's a way of telling your brain look at this, and naturally most games do it with lighter hits are going to cause less hit stun, heavier hits are going to cause more. The most extreme version of this is the fucking super counter hits in Strive, where the whole screen goes into super slow motion, and just the giant counter fucking appears in the background, and like the music gets washed out for a second. Like that's extremely, like they want you to know that was a big ass hit. They want you to know that was like a critical hit. So NRS games just don't really do much in that regard. There might be a tiny little bit of hit stop, but for the most part, a lot of like combos and stuff, it just kind of looks like, it's weird. It's like stuff just kind of happens. Stuff just happens. Like characters, like the one character attacking is just kind of like flailing, and then the other one is just like and like weird, like visually in terms of like the animations. It's like, how many strings? Go watch like MK or Injustice or something, and just watch for like strings that end, or they have some moment where like the character just kind of like they wiggle their fist and a hitbox just kind of like happens, and they're just like woo with their fist, and then just it's doing damage, and it's like, it's so weird. I'm like, what are they doing? There's a lot of attacks. I'm like, what are they doing? Yeah, and when you look at the older games, it doesn't really happen. Like when you look at the the classic arcade titles, with the digitized actors, a lot of those characters, like they actually have very strong like key poses, and the movement isn't it might look a little stiff, but once you watch it for a while, it's more that it's just like really snappy because of, the, I guess you can call it an animation style. Excuse me. And actually, like, there's some interviews with like Daniel Pacina, who's the guy who played like a couple of the, what did he play? Scorpion? No, he played like Sub-Zero and Scorpion and Johnny Cage. He definitely played Johnny Cage. And he was talking, there's like this interview where he was actually, talking about the process of, okay, well, if we're doing like, it was so weird, coming from a martial arts background of like, okay, he knows how to do this move, but then they're like, okay, but in order to like sell it visually or to make it visually clear, like you have to really like exaggerate it when you do it so that you can get these strong, what you would call key poses. And so like, yeah, the games generally have like pretty decent animations or posing, which I think is like the most important thing, is honestly the poses. And then even the 3D era games have fine animations. Like there's a little bit of that, like the character like like I don't know, lifts their foot or something, and then like fucking Reptile has this move in his like crab stance where he like lifts his foot and there's like no momentum behind it, but it fucking like launches. It's like what? Yeah, it's there's a little bit of that, but for a lot of it, it's fine. Like not even that noticeable. Characters like actually like lean into their swings and like twist their body to do different attacks and stuff, and like it looks fine. And then suddenly you get to the NRS games, and I think genuinely what I think their problem is just a super over-reliance on motion capture. I think that like the games always use some form of motion capture, and most games, big budget games at least, use some kind of motion capture. I remember like when Capcom did like the behind the scenes Street Fighter V, they showed like some like motion capture actress for like Rose doing her like insane like stand heavy kick where she just like swings over. And like they actually like how they got that like in their little green screen studio. So like, yeah, most games use it, but they kind of blend the hand like hand done like keyframed animation with the motion capture, like, and I don't know. I think Capcom's actually really good at using motion capture. I think like all of G's little animations where he does like he starts walking and like he waves to the audience, like his little like presidential like or he like kind of like tips his hat when he does a special move. Like that stuff's great, and that kind of motion is something that you only really get with like a motion capture. I think the way that NRS does it is they mocap fucking like everything. They motion capture literally like every single move. And then like, so like the weird thing is okay, so in a fighting game it could be like this kick comes out in 7 frames. But the fastest you can get like human to get that out is like 9 frames, assuming you're going 60 FPS. So you run into this weird thing when you motion cap everything where you're doing like the balance of the game, like the frame data and stuff, does not like match. You have to like adjust the motion capture to match that, unless you want it to just be generally slower, right? And like, what if a move has to be nerfed or buffed or something like that? Like, how do you handle that? So literally what they do is they just record it, I'm pretty sure in like slow motion, like the slowest possible, and then they just speed it up or slow it down depending on how fast the move needs to be. They just like speed up or slow down the recorded like motion capture data, which is why like so many of the attacks in those games just look weird, because like there's like no actual momentum being like behind them from the like actors. It's super. Yeah, I don't know. It's always bugged me. I was never able to put my finger on it until there's a bunch of videos from a channel called Sugar Punch Design Works, I think, about the anime. They do a bunch of stuff about like animation and fighting games and stuff. I was never able to put my finger on it, but they did a lengthy series of videos on NRS games, and like, yeah, I just like, it's like, what happened? Like, why did it get so bad? And mind you, not every single one, like animation in those games is bad. There's some that are pretty good, but I just remember watching like, saw some footage of someone playing like, I think Deadshot in Injustice 2, and like his guns, like he just sticks out his hands and then the bullets come out and his arms are just completely straight. Like there's no recoil, it's like the weakest fucking gun animations I've ever seen. Which is funny because we're going to talk about Happy Chaos later. Anyway, I do want to peruse a little more of the classic MK library. I'm really curious about like Ultimate MK3. I'm kind of curious. I might boot that up on Fightcade sometime soon. Real quick, want to mention, oh geez Louise, where is it? I've been covering this story about the Raven Software, the QA testers who were trying to form a union. Well, they did it. They did it, guys. Yeah, so on the 23rd, as reported by Jason Schreier, it's now official. Testers at Activision-owned Raven Software have voted to form the U.S. video game industry's first major union. There were 19 votes for and 3 votes against. Man, I wonder who was against it. So it's not over. They need to negotiate a contract, and Activision is probably going to make it as difficult as possible. And they put out a little statement about, they can't tell you not to do it, but they can say, like, maybe you don't want to. For instance, quote, union contracts often put an end to flexible scheduling. A union can't guarantee a pay increase. And about, it can take a very long time to form a contract. Having a union at Raven could fundamentally alter the way Raven works in ways that can have a significant negative impact for the studio and for individual Raven employees. I guess it can. But what if we can't overwork you? If you, I don't know, if your business model required you to overwork your, if your like business plan requires you to overwork your workers, it's probably not a good plan, not very sustainable. Yeah, so I yeah, they made another very like careful statement about, we believe an important decision that will impact the entire Raven Software studio of roughly 350 people should not be made by 19 Raven employees. So like, we don't think, which is really funny because someone followed that up with, someone responded to that in the quote in the comments with isn't that just what like a board of directors is? Like isn't that how most companies work, that they're made up of like, so many hundreds of people and then like 20 people make all the decisions? Isn't that how they already work? Yeah, well, good luck to them. I hope that this is the beginning of a positive trend in the industry of employees not being abused by their employers, and that in the end, we're gonna come out with a healthier working environment for the people who put in so much goddamn work for all these fucking games we play. Why am I swearing so much? Maybe I'm just passionate. Yeah, and like, I guess it should go without saying, but ultimately that will result in better games. Like, remember when Nintendo was really struggling during the Wii U era, and they decided not to lay off like any employees? And Iwata's reasoning was like, if you're worried about getting fired for not, for whatever, for a reason that's kind of out of your hands, then you're just going to produce less good work. And we just need to make good games right now. And now here they are. Now they just lay off contract workers. Oh. Anyway, best of luck to the Ravenites. So this weekend, the reason this podcast is going to come out a little bit later today is that this weekend, past weekend, was Combo Breaker, one of the biggest fighting game majors in the U.S. at least, probably biggest in the world. In the good old Midwest, in fucking Schaumburg, dude. There's something really special about seeing like a major event, like, a major event happening, and it's in like a place you grew up, and you like recognize. I didn't grow up in Schaumburg specifically, but like I saw it, I was like, Schaumburg. There's something just so amusing about it, like this local town. Yeah, so we watched a bit of it. I was anticipating there being the Guilty Gear, like at least like the first Season 2 character for the DLC announced at the end of the tournament. Nope. I literally stayed up I've been on a shitty sleep schedule recently. I literally stayed up way too long, and I was like, okay, well, let me at least like stay up. The reason the video has come out late is because I bad time management, and I was like sitting there. I have like, there's 5 minutes left to edit in this fucking video. There's 5 minutes of raw footage. let me just... And I just couldn't power through it. And I'm like, okay, I really need to go to sleep. But it's like winners semis. Fuck, I don't know, I gotta talk about this on the podcast. So I stayed up. And guess what? There was no announcement. Which means that, did I talk about this last week? There was, oh, no, I didn't. There was this, like, 1 year anniversary live stream that Arxis did for Strive. And everyone thought, like, oh, they're gonna do the new announcement. And then it was just, like, an hour and a half or 2.5 hours of Daisuke, like, eating sandwiches and cookies. And the rest of the developers talking about, like, the plushes that they're gonna sell. Which I kind of want. It's one thing Kat and I can agree on. So, yeah, everyone was like, okay, well, if there's no announcement this week, it's gotta be a combo breaker. It's gotta be a combo breaker, because, like, that's obviously why you wouldn't do an announcement on this stream, because you're saving it for the big tournament. Oops. So, yeah, I mean, the tournament was good. The tournament was really good. I really enjoyed it. When I was at Kat's on Friday, we watched a bit of it. We tried to watch the Guilty Gear tournament, the Guilty Gear stream, but Friday was the first day, and stream troubles. Lots of stream troubles. I mean, it was bad. It was literally lagging. Like, it was pausing, like, full-on pausing, like, every, like, 7 or 8 seconds. For a few seconds each time. And it wasn't a problem with, like, our internet or anything. It was actually just coming from the stream, because everyone was getting it on the stream. Everyone was spamming lag. It got really bad. Like, we tried to watch a couple games, and eventually, like, she was just like, yeah, this is just unwatchable. And I guess I'm a little more empathetic to that, because I've run streams before, and just me streaming my gameplay from, like, my computer ran into, like, a bunch of problems, at least when I started out. Yeah, big, like, messy, like, it's just not working, because, you know, the bitrate cap is not set to the right limit, or something like that, or the FPS isn't, so, like, man, I guarantee you, like, yeah, the viewing experience was pretty bad, but I guarantee you there was some guy in, like, the broadcast room, and in between, who was just, like, freaking the hell out, and in between every single set was probably, like, changing all these settings, and then, like, okay, hope this one works, and then it didn't work, and he's like, fuck, we just change it around again. I guarantee you that's what was happening. So we were like, it's too hard to watch, you know, and it's only the beginning of the turn. It's like the start of pools. It's not a big deal. So let's check out another one of the streams. I looked at the stream schedule, and it was all like color. It was a bunch of different channels, Twitch channels, who were streaming different games. They were basically in charge of streaming the different tournaments. And I was like, oh, there's a Third Strike tournament. I'll watch some Third Strike. Well, the color coding was a little, like, there was a couple colors that were too similar to each other. So I ended up accidentally clicking on the Tekken 7 stream. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. But then I was like, let me double check. I was like, okay, the wrong stream. I was going to switch over. Then I was like, oh, wait. It's fucking... Wait, who's on commentary that day? I think, was it Tasty Steve? I love Tasty Steve. It was like Tasty Steve and Spag. Yeah! Yeah, they were commentating Tekken. I was like, oh, let's go. So we sat and we watched that. And I have to say, I think, I've thought about this for a while, but this only confirmed my suspicion. I think Tekken 7 is the best spectator experience for a fighting game. for like a casual observer, like someone who doesn't play fighting games, doesn't play Tekken, maybe may only vaguely kind of knows a little bit about them, maybe has just touched them a little bit. I think Tekken 7 for like that kind of a person, and more honestly, and above, right? Above people above that in terms of like familiarity. I think it's the best watching experience. I was like, and maybe this is something that's like just specific to to like us two, but so like I have never really played a Tekken game. I've played like I think 30 minutes of Tekken 5. And that's about it. I know a little bit about it. I'm generally familiar with the history of the series, the way that it's played, certain like techniques. I kind of know, some characters' archetypes and stuff like that. I know some of the specific like mechanics that are unique to the 3D engine. I'm just not very experienced with like 3D fighters, besides Dissidia. Have I gone on a Dissidia rant on this podcast? Remind me someday too. So, I only know like vaguely a bit about Tekken. I'm not. It's not nearly the same level of familiarity as I would watching Guilty Gear, right? Completely like night and day, basically. And Kat plays no fighting games besides Nick All-Star Brawl. So she is moving around in my house. So, basically all she knows is what I tell her about, essentially. Which is mainly just low-tier God memes. Yeah, but in terms of, like, the mechanics, the systems, as far as I'm aware, she doesn't really know that much about it. Like general, like, I don't even know if she knows the difference between high-low blocking. Stuff like that. So, like, from a very, very casual outsider experience of just like, yeah, I know what Tekken is, that kind of thing. She was so invested. It seemed like she always found, like, someone she was able to, like, root for. And it was always, like, I remember one of the first games was, like, someone was playing, like, Eliza, and she was like, oh, like, gothy vampire girl, yeah, I want that person to win. And then there was someone playing, like, there was like a king mirror match, and she picked the one that looked more like Nacho Libre, and then she got like really into it. And then someone picked, what was really fun is there was a match between, there was a guy, what was he? Was he a king player? I think. There was a lot of king players, is what I'm trying to say. There was a lot of king players. I think he was a king player from Illinois. So I was like, he's mine. He's in my court, or I'm in his court. And then the other person, his opponent, was a Josie player. And so Kat was like, oh, a Filipina. So she was like rooting for the Josie player, and I was rooting for the guy from Illinois, and it was fun. Pretty sure the Josie player won. I think Tekken just has a great visual, if we're talking about like visual language or presentation or making the audience understand things, I think Tekken has a great visual language. Like, obviously there's things like huge hit sparks and like multiple different kinds of hit sparks. It's very like, attacks are just big and like swinging, and the motions are the key poses are very like, I know what is happening. I guess, like, in that sense, on a very basic level, it's easy to understand like which character's attacking, which character's getting hit, the way that they recoil and everything. But also, Tekken has a very, I guess, I don't know if realistic is the right word, but it has a very intuitive, visually intuitive way of like knowing when a character can get hit. Because characters can be hit when you're on the ground, and they can attack from the ground, and they can like roll and in different directions. They can like tech off the ground and stuff like that. So there's like a lot of options. It's a little more obvious to a spectator rather than like in pretty much every 2D fighter, where outside of a couple moves, like very niche character specific moves, it'll be like, oh, you get a knockdown, that character's invulnerable until they wake up. Which of course, creates a whole interesting game around that. But with Tekken, it's like, oh yeah, they hit them on the ground because they fucking like did a little like swipe kick or something like that. It's very clear when that's happening. I don't know. Also, I don't know. It's kind of fun to watch characters just get blown up. People get blown up in Tekken. And it was a lot of fun. And I, as someone who is not into Tekken specifically, like if they ever do a Tekken with rollback, I'll buy into it. I really enjoyed watching it. Not even like really understand. I was in that weird point where I was like watching it and like also kind of trying to understand some of the mechanics, just like visually, like, okay, how does this thing work? Like, what are these different like states? Like, how does the juggle system works? I'm trying to like figure out, which maybe like she wasn't having as much of, but I was like trying to figure it out, and I still like enjoyed it, not knowing really like 100% of what was going on. So yeah, I think it was fun. Combo Break. It was a great tournament. There was a sick moment with there was a match. It was a Gigas player. He's called, I think, that one Asian, and versus like a Jack player, I think it was. And so Gigas is like been like a historically low tier character in Tekken 7. He's like just like a big weird monster science, like, I don't even know how to describe him. He's like a big body horror, like morph monster, like morph suit monster. And he it was like last round or something like that, and the fucking Gigas player, it goes like, it gets really close, and it looks like the Gigas player is gonna get timed out. He doesn't he's the other guy is the Jack player is like got the life lead. The timer's getting down. It's like 10 seconds, and you start to notice, you're like, oh my god, there's like no time left in the round. How's he gonna? Oh, he's just gonna get timed out. And then fucking like at like 5 seconds left, the Gigas player activates, I think it's his rage drive? I think it's the rage drive. Which is where it's like his low health move, where he like fucking just barrels. He just starts walking forward, and with like completely like with super armor, and he literally just walks right through the Jack player's attack and just boop 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 boop. Just fucking wins the round in like the last 5 seconds. It was so hype. We both popped up. We were like, oh! It was really fun. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. And now with that over, I guess I was going to talk about Happy Chaos. Yeah, I don't know. That character's fucking insane. That's all I have to say about it. I don't really feel like talking about Happy Chaos too much. Potentially this might take the rest of the podcast. We'll see. So, the PlayStation State of Play is happening on the 2nd, on Thursday, which will be before the next episode. And now, this is not confirmed at all. There's been leaks about it, but it's like... Excuse me. There's been some leaks about it, but it's kind of like... the things they're going to talk... Leaks about, like, what the schedule is looking like for it, and it's like, these are... Anyone could have guessed this. It's not... It's not, like, guaranteed. But, just because... there is a possibility that there's going to be something about Street Fighter 6. In what capacity? No idea. For how long? No idea. I don't know, a full trailer? Who knows? But just because, and because I put this together like months ago when the announcement came out, I want to go over the preliminary. Preliminary? No. I want to go over, I guess it's a wish list, or basically it's my Street Fighter 6 roster. It's the, if I was leading the charge, this is what I would do. So, I want to make a couple things. Let me open this. So before I get into it, I would like to say that this is, I'm assuming, I've talked a bit about what kind of business model I would go for. I would just have fucking every character. I'm swearing a lot today. I would just have every character be free, extensive single player content, and because I want them to go full on, not hold anything back. My roster is 26 characters. That might be a lot, honestly. You might be able to cut a few of these, and I'll go over that later. I want to go over this, and I want to talk specifically about my picks and why. And it might be, you might consider it, well, I think it might be weird, more controversial. I say controversial like anyone gives a fuck about my podcast that gets 40 views on average. But if this was the roster, I guess the controversial pick would be more who is not on the roster. So, 26 characters. Mind you, 3 of those are new characters. 23 of those are going to be returning. And I organized it roughly by the order that they were introduced in the series. I just kind of grouped them together like that. So let's jump into it. Okay, well, number 1 obviously is Ryu. That's this is not Ryu's in the game. So yeah, obviously they're not gonna make a Street Fighter game without Ryu. But specifically, if they're going to have him in the game, I want them to lean into the idea that he is aged up and that some time has passed, and I want more of an emphasis, or I want them to bring out this idea that at this point in his life, post Street Fighter 3, that Ryu has attained this level of mastery over his art, right? This level of he's not to be messed with. He's much closer to the master, master level or whatever. Now how they choose to do that, I don't know. That's going to be kind of up to the gameplay systems and stuff. But if you want to take kind of some cues from the way that Luke was designed, maybe just giving I think Ryu being the all-rounder of the cast, it's a really good opportunity to, I think, have a character who can be picked up very easily, but takes a lot of skill or a lot more time invested to really tap into the full potential, to actually understand, which would be a great gameplay or a lore parallel, because it's literally him mastering the what the fuck is the good energy called? I don't remember. And now naturally they're doing that with the beard design and all that, the hot Ryu, but push it more than just being visually. Actually just feel that through gameplay, maybe some way he can charge his attacks, some kind of new, I don't know, maybe introduce some new stuff to his moveset. I don't know, but new ways of using his attacks. Like, who knows? Apparently, in Street Fighter lore, it's like a symbol of mastery if you can throw like a fireball with one hand or something. That would be cool if he could like do that, just like a little way, or maybe he could throw them faster, like double, like shoot two of them at once with both hands, like fucking. Actually, that's literally what Akuma does with the air fireballs in some of the other games. Yeah, that's Ryu. Ken, I don't know what they would do with Ken. You gotta have Ken, but I think it's maybe just a good time to like. He's been, honestly, I think 5 did a good job of differentiating him a lot more obviously from Ryu, but yeah, it's ultimately up to like the specific systems and mechanics of the game how he's treated. Chun-Li, obviously. I'm assuming they're gonna do something weird with her moveset. Chun-Li, they always do something different with her in every game. I don't know. They're always kind of like fiddling with her like moveset or even like her inputs and stuff. There'll be like something silly. This one I was a little like, would I include Cammy in the base roster? And ultimately I was like, yeah. Because number one, I want to see Cammy. And number two, I don't know. I think she's just like a pretty natural pick for like a character who's just very popular. One of the first just like female Street Fighter characters. The second, actually. There's just, I don't know, there's just a lot of people who, what I'm trying to go for across this is like I want a good spread of characters in terms of both like representation throughout the series and also playstyle. So that's like, I think Cammy's just a generally good choice. Sixth character, Fei Long, which is funny because there was like a weird controversy recently with this thing about how like, Bruce Lee's estate doesn't want depictions of or homages to Bruce Lee because of the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when they kind of like made fun of him. And that ended up being like not really the case. It was like this guy said something on his stream. He was like a musician who worked for Capcom, and then he said something on stream and it got kind of extrapolated by some journalists, and it turned into a big whole thing, and I think he got blacklisted from Capcom. Yeah, it was dumb. But as far as I'm aware, Fei Long is actually not off the table. And even if he was, screw it. It's my list. I think Fei Long is cool. Number one, he's a Bruce Lee homage, which there's like a nice simplicity to Fei Long, where it's like he's just kind of Bruce Lee, and he's got, the black pants. You could like redesign him in some way to be maybe like, I mean, he's always going to have some other alternate like Bruce Lee-esque costumes or something, but yeah, I like the simplicity of he's just kind of like a really good martial artist because he's Bruce Lee. The original Rekka character. And I think it's just been a while since we've seen him. I think it would be cool to see he's got these like crazy like he's got these very memorable animations for not having any kind of like really, he's got like the fire kick, I guess, but other than that he's just kind of doing like martial arts stuff, just hand-to-hand kicks and stuff like that. But even with that, he's got these very memorable animations of him just like very strong key poses is what I've heard it described as. Please change the input for Chicken Wing. I don't like the input for Chicken Wing. Maybe like flesh out his moveset a little bit. I think it's like a good opportunity to. He has a 1-inch punch move, doesn't he? He has to. If he doesn't, am I just like misremembering? Does Fei Long not have a Fei Long 1-inch punch? It's like you gotta have that. Okay, yeah, he does. Geki Rinken. Okay, yeah, right. I think that that would be such a cool thing to see in Six's art style with like the super realism. The pa. I'm really curious with this kind of art style if and how they go into like the more like fantastical stuff with, obviously characters throwing around like fireballs and electricity and shit, and like kind of how they present that. So the idea to me of like a character who just has like incredible physical power and just like this short like single punch is I think you could do some really neat, super like heavy, high impact things with it. The 7th character I have is T-Hawk. And this one comes with a big caveat. So, I like T-Hawk. It's fun. Maybe this probably isn't, a unique experience, but at least in like the area that I grew up in Illinois, in the Midwest of the U.S., there's a lot of Native American like presence in the sense of things like street signs, like street. There's a ton of streets that are named after that are named after like native tribes. I used to go to there was a park near my house that was called like Potawatomi Park, which was like I'm pretty sure it was a native tribe. I almost got strangled by a bunch of other kids there one time. That's a different story. I used to go to this park actually for like a theater camp when I was a kid called Indian Boundary, and I remember like going inside of during camp we would go inside like the main building of the park, and there was like the walls had this kind of how would I call it, like sort of like Native American carvings in them with like symbols of like local tribes and stuff, like just kind of like a pattern carved into the wood that would wrap around the walls and stuff in a little, so maybe a 1 foot strip wrapped around the walls. And there was just always in my life, there was just always kind of like, and also, being part of like the Boy Scouts and stuff, which has tries to pay a lot of like homage to Native American cultures, to like recognize that as being also like America. So it's always been something that's like appealed to me, or something that like I just kind of have like a familiarity with, at least in like, oh yeah, and I think that like what's kind of cool about fighting games is that it's one of the few genres that has like notable Native American representation. And now, mind you, like it's not a ton, but I mean, like you obviously have T-Hawk, you have Nightwolf from Mortal Kombat. You've got Thunder, and what's the other one? What's the other one from Killer Instinct? I forget his name. Is it also like Wolf something or Eagle? Thunder and Eagle. Yeah. There might be some others that I'm forgetting, but it's like, yeah, those are like 3 kind of like significant series that have like Native American characters, and that's kind of cool. Now, mind you, there is a big difference between Thunder and T-Hawk, and this is where my caveat comes in for bringing back T-Hawk. I think he should be redesigned. I think he should get an extensive redesign visually. So like the thing is like, yeah, Street Fighter has always had like stereotypes and stuff, and it's always just something you're like, okay. But I don't think it was ever like intentionally racist or intentionally insensitive or something like that, because I mean the Japanese characters were about as much and the other Asian characters in Street Fighter are about as, they have their share of stereotypes. But T-Hawk is a little like, he isn't like a farce, like he isn't like a parody or anything. So like it's not that bad. He's not like played for laughs. It's just very like, oh, he at the end of his super he lands on you and does the raising his hand thing, and it's like, it's a little much. And I've heard some very hit or miss opinions from like actual native peoples on T-Hawk. But what's interesting is you talk to them, you'll talk to them about like, Native American characters in fighting games. And hey, if we've got any Native American bros in the comment section, I'm actually curious what you guys think. At least from what I've seen in like comment sections and stuff, it's like you ask them about T-Hawk and they're like, or maybe they're like indifferent. And then you ask them about like Thunder from KI and they're like, oh, Thunder's fucking awesome. Thunder rules. Dude, have you heard Thunder's theme from KI? Holy that song goes hard. It's so cool. Like it's like Mick Gordon like gent metal, but it's like mixed, like he studied like, I don't know what tribe Thunder is supposed to be from, but like he actually like went and studied like their music or something and used like instruments and shit like that from it, and it's like so dope. And like actual like calls and stuff, it's so cool. Like it's such a cool representation of like a Native American character. I think T-Hawk, you could retool him to easily be like that. T-Hawk's always had like a weird thing where it's like because he's not actually like Native American. He's Mexican. So like, I guess it's like, okay, he's maybe from like the area that became Texas or California that we just fucking took. Like one of those maybe. I don't know if they ever said like exactly where he's from, but like, yeah, he's like Mexican, but I don't know how much he resembles like actual like Mexican native tribes. I don't know. I've heard shaky things on like how good his representation was or how well they represented that culture. Mind you, this is a bunch of Japanese people in like the 90s who have probably never met a Native American person, much less probably even been to America. So there might have been some imperfect understandings going on in the drafting of some of these characters. But I think T-Hawk is cool. I think like his kind of almost like rush down grappler archetype is, and the fact he's like this big body character is cool, and it's unique in Street Fighter. There's other characters sort of like that, but I think T-Hawk does it in a way that's pretty interesting. His whole like dive bombing and all that stuff. Maybe change his idle pose. His idle pose has always been weird to me. Next up, 9th character, Sakura. So one of the things that I wanted to lean into with this list, or emphasize with this list, is that 6, I think, should have a very clear direction with being the new generation. They tried to do this with 3, and it failed for a couple reasons. Number one was like, well, there's a lot of reasons Street Fighter 3 failed. Financially. Like not being on home consoles until like Third Strike or something like that. But I think one of the reasons, just from like the instant like visceral fan reaction, was there was like no recognizable characters. And that it's something that like you have to most fighting games only add like, most new fighting games only add like in their base roster maybe like 3 or 4 new characters, right, at most. So completely changing the cast up was like, woo, it was a big shock. So kind of the theme that I was sort of looking for was characters, I wanted to work characters into this roster who kind of represent like the next generation, the younger generation, without completely, it's more of like a passing the torch game, if that makes sense, because I 100% believe it's going past 3, so they can finally actually like do stuff with these characters. Because for the last 2 games, Street Fighter's kind of been stuck in the past. Like, 4 was very much like, it's a throwback, which is like, okay, that's fine, it can be a throwback. Because it was super safe with, like, depictions of the legacy characters. Every single character, I'm pretty sure, like, the base roster was literally just the Street Fighter 2 roster, in their, like, exact same designs. 5 kind of tried to push things forward, but it was also, like, doing kind of a throwback thing with, I don't know, it was like a weird middle point. I think the game overall had like a very weird lack of direction, I think is a good way to put it. Like a clear direction until like near the end. Now I think they're probably going for this kind of a theme of the younger characters. Obviously bringing like Luke in. Luke is on this list. He's just at the end because I didn't feel like it was necessarily worth mentioning. So yeah, Sakura is like the first one that I kind of picked for that. She's the obvious one. I mean, that was kind of her idea from the beginning, right? From the alpha games. But now I think it's kind of neat because at this point in like the storyline, she's actually in a point where she's probably around her like mid-20s about, and so she isn't like quite as like inexperienced as maybe some of the other characters, so she's almost could be like a middle ground between the newbies, the young'uns, and like the OGs of the series. I think that could be like a cool sort of role for her. And I just like Sakura. I think everyone just likes Sakura. She's like fun. She's like a spunky kind of like tomboy character. She's always got this kind of like... She has like an interesting take on Ryu's moveset. And I think that they could push her forward to like, okay, you know, she's just continuing her life in the professional world, or she's like going into the martial arts thing. I think either would work for her. Maybe there's like some specific profession, like she's like an understudy or something in like martial arts or something like that could kind of emphasize that role in the story that I'm just thinking up. Next one, Sodom or Sodom. The Japanese it's pronounced like Sodomu. Sodom? So I guess Sodom. So Sodom is a really cool character, design-wise, and he's just never gotten his time. And it's always been like, basically just timing things, or they couldn't figure out how to work him into the lore, or they just didn't know what to do with him, or they didn't have enough time, or something like that. And it's just because he's just been relegated to a cameo the last 2 games. In the backgrounds of stages, and you see this cool like big samurai guy, and you're like, whoa, what's that guy? And he's like really he's neat. He has a very weird moveset. I'm not sure exactly how he plays, but I don't know. I think the fact he has like moves that you do like when you tech off the ground like is so interesting, like these weird recovery moves as you hit the ground. I just think he's cool, and I think a lot of people want him back, and having him on the base roster would be a really nice addition. It would be like a nice, like, oh, like a fan favorite. And even if you're like a casual observer and you don't really know who Sodom is, you could still look at him and think he's cool and be like, oh, like a cool samurai guy in Street Fighter. And then you find out that his whole character is that he's like a huge weeaboo. He's just an American he's basically just Chip from Guilty Gear. He's just an American guy who like pretends to be Japanese. Yeah, I don't know. You could. I just want Sodom back, honestly. Number 11, Sean. So continuing with that idea of the new blood of the series, Sean is a character who people have wanted back for a while because he's like, people like Sean. Like he's cool. He has a very like, because he's one of the the younger characters. I think youngest character in 3, and he does represent like a lot of that like passing the torch type of thing. Because he is I think he's supposed to be like trained by Ken or something like that. So he's like a good addition, right? He's a good addition in terms of yeah, I don't know. I don't want to repeat myself too much. They could finally give him some justice, because he's so bottom tier. He was intentionally made bottom tier in Third Strike for lore reasons. So maybe they could like actually make him like decent again. Yeah, and I don't know, he's I think a lot of people like Sean just because he kind of taps that like young kind of upstart spunky kind of kid. He throws a basketball. It's cool. Number 12. This is a very like me pick. I want Necro back. I know not everyone likes Necro. I like Necro. I think he's cool. I think the idea of, which is actually something that a couple characters did in Street Fighter 3, where they would like take almost like two concepts from. They would take like two different Street Fighter 2 characters and to kind of like mash them together into like one idea. So like Necro specifically was like, oh, what if we took Blanca and Dalsim, which you wouldn't necessarily think to do, because Dalsim is like a zoner and Blanca plays more aggressively like rush down kind of. But you put that together, and you get like a really interesting character who has these like big, like I love his visual design. I just love freaks. I love the weirdos. He's got this like wiggly, like he's like totally pale white monster man with like purple pants, and he got these wiggly snake arms, and he has these crazy big normals where he just stretches his leg out into the air and just but he kind of uses that to almost play like this sort of mid-range game where he then wants to like get in and get these big combos where he just does his like wiggly woggly woo. I don't know what the move is called, but it's the one where he just like slaps his arms forward like with like electricity or something. I just think he's cool, and I want to see how freakish he looks in this realistic RE engine art style. Not everyone would bring, not everyone would bring Necro back, but I would. Number 13, Hugo. I think we can go one game without having Zangief in the base roster. I know that sounds insane to some people, but I think we can have one where we just give someone else a turn to be like the main grappler. Because honestly, I think Hugo is really, I think Hugo is way cooler, if I'm being honest. I think his moveset looks cooler. I think like the big body slams he does, the claps, and like the idea of like just the visuals of him like looping the big claps is like very satisfying to watch. The fact that he's just like this big hulking monster man that's based off Andre the Giant, and he just kind of like lumbers around and sort of like twitches, and he's kind of weird and off-putting. It's charming and cool in some kind of way. He's very like unique. You remember Hugo. He sticks out in your mind because he's just so huge and weird, almost like a proto Abigail in that kind of like muscly body horror, almost like freakishly muscular. Yeah, I think Hugo would be a good stand-in for like the resident grappler. Like obviously we have T-Hawk and we have Sodom, who has some command grab stuff going on, but Hugo is like a out and out super grappler. He's the main one. I just want to see him back. I missed him in 5. Number 14. Remy. I think Remy's cool. I think his design is cool, and everyone forgets about him because he sucks in Third Strike. And it's a real shame, because Remy is a really interesting idea for a character. Like, how I mentioned, like, Necro is like Dulcim and Blanca put together. Remy is Sagat and Guile. So, 2 different kinds of, like, zoners, basically. I think obviously of course I would think Remy looks cool. I think his style is fast. I just love his shade of. I think his color scheme is so nice, like the red pants and that very like electric blue, and the black jacket is very like it complements. It kind of brings everything together, and he's so cool to look at. And he's an edgelord. I love just like I don't know, aesthetically. Like I love the names of his moves. Like what is I think his projectile is called like Divine Light or something. His flash kick is called like Crescent Moon Kick. Pretty sure his like other like kind of roundhouse move is called Cold Blue Kick. I'm like, oh, that's such a cool name for a move. I just think it's a cool idea to have a character who has like a mid-hitting fireball, or no, like a high fireball that you can duck under, almost like Mortal Kombat actually, and like a low fireball, and just him being able to like throw like he's a very simple character moveset wise, but I think he's got like some cool stuff going on, mixing those 2 elements from Sagat and Guile. Of like he's a charge character, but he's got this interesting kind of like long range mix up game where he can make like the really difficult wall of projectiles for you to go through, but he's limited by this like charge mechanic, right? Or maybe not limited. I don't really know. The problem is that Remy is literally just in the wrong game. I think I've talked about this before, but yeah, Street Fighter 3 has. I'm gonna make an extreme statement, maybe a hot take. Street Fighter 3 has like no meaningful interaction from full screen, which is like a problem because of parry, because parry nullifies projectiles so hard, which is a problem when you're the game's dedicated projectile zoner. So Remy struggles. He's like bottom 3. But the problem is like he isn't like so bad. Like 12 and Sean, okay. 12 and Sean are like bottom 2. I think it goes back and forth which one of them is worse. But like they are so bad that they become like interesting. Like people like because they're on that end of the spectrum. Remy is like not, he's bad, but he's not bad enough to be like to catch people's interest. But he catches my interest. You're in my heart, Remy. I want you back. He's the Guile stand-in for the game. He's the Guile function, if you will. I think it would be neat. I just want to see it. Number 15, Dudley. Yeah, I mean this one's obvious. I'm just to be clear. Number 15 and 16. I'll go over this right now. It's Dudley and Makoto, which ends our Third Strike block. Yeah, I think they're basically shoo-ins anyway because they are such fan favorites. They're so cool. Um, like simple, cool, memorable designs. Um, I love Dudley. I love like the boxing characters. I think just his whole playstyle is cool. I love his attitude. I love well-dressed characters. So personally, I'd like to see him back. I love Makoto because she's like a spunky little tomboy, and she's cute. And she yells a lot. Who doesn't like Makoto? So yeah, I mean, they're kind of like two of the. When I think of fan favorites from Third Strike, I guess there's like Yun. You know, who were new in that game. Like Yun, people kind of resent Yun because he's too good, but it really does come back down to like Makoto and Dudley, like in terms of the new characters. They're probably like the most popular ones, and yeah, for good reasons. Just, you know, good simple designs, like memorable gameplay. Dudley's whole like weaving in and out boxing thing. He takes the boxer angle in a much different direction than Balrog does, and where Balrog is very like super fast normals, rush you down with these big charge punches. Dudley is more like weaving back and forth, kind of faking out the opponent, a little Slayer-like, if I will. And then Makoto is like a rare female grappler who's like this tiny girl, and she has like the slowest walk speed but this insane dash, and she can get these full insane combos off of her command grab. Yeah, just like super cool, great characters, and the fact, okay, here's the reason I think they're a shoo-in for 6 in the first place, is that they're the characters, like, Necro is not a DLC seller, right? Hugo is not really a DLC seller. Dudley and Makoto are DLC sellers, but they weren't in 5. And even when they did like the emergency 5th season and they decided to bring back a bunch of characters, they didn't include them, which is very curious because, excuse me, you'd think that it would be such just an easy pick, right? Like, who do people want to buy? Dudley and Makoto. Excuse me. But they didn't. They didn't choose them, and I think that's because they've been saving them for 6. I think that's the most likely scenario. Do I want to see any changes to them gameplay-wise? Most of these characters I would not change gameplay-wise until we knew something about the systems of the game. And besides, you know, characters like Ryu, I'm not exactly sure. Well, with Ryu, I think that, like, I just think it's time for the character to go in like a further in like an evolved direction. But yeah, that's generally no like gameplay changes. I'm mostly thinking about like design changes. They'll probably get some changes, but it'll have more to do with the specifics of the game, which we just don't know yet. And maybe I'll have some revised thoughts once we do find out more about the game. Number 17, we're finally out of the Street Fighter 3 area with Sea Viper. Now, Sea Viper is the only Street Fighter 4 character that I've included on this roster, because generally, besides like Jury, I'm trying to think of like new Street Fighter 4 characters. There just weren't a lot that like really hit. Besides, now to be fair, Jury and Sea Viper were like huge. Like they were very, very memorable. I guess Gouken. I guess Gouken was new, technically. Oni, technically. Oh, Rufus. Abel. El Fuerte, I guess. People like El Fuerte. Daisuke Ono plays El Fuerte? I didn't even know that. Seth, who was really boring in that game. Thank God they made him way more interesting in 5. Who got added in the updated versions? Just super. Like, who are the actual new characters? Adon? And that doesn't count. Hakan? Let's go to Arcade Edition. Where's Arcade Edition? Where's Arcade Edition? Did Arcade Edition add any characters? Oni. Yep. Oh, it just added Oni. Okay. And then Ultra added... Where's Ultra? Where the heck? Why isn't there an easy link to where Ultra is? There it is. Ultra added... Relento. Relento's cool. Yeah, honestly, out of the new cast of Street Fighter 4, besides Sea Viper and Jury, not too many winners. I'm actually surprised at how much better the newcomers generally are in 5, if I'm going to be honest. Actually, not all of them. I'd have to double check. But yeah, Sea Viper is cool. Sea Viper, she's almost like... I've heard her sometimes described as Capcom's take on an SNK character. Just a super high execution, crazy character who's really stylish with their combos. And I think that's it's something that's really neat about her. I gotta stop my brain from jumping around. I was going to talk about how cool her design is. But yeah, I think that her whole concept is cool. I think it's good to have one just higher skill cap character. I think that's neat. Having more difficult characters, it creates almost it kind of reminds me of in an MMO or something when you see a guy with really high tier armor, super rare, or a really rare mount or something that you can only get from doing this thing that's really difficult, and you're whoa, it's this show of this person's skill or their investment into the game. And when you see someone who's playing a really high execution character, when I go online on on Plus R, and I play a Johnny, and they're smoking me, which isn't hard, but when they're smoking me and they're doing crazy combos, I'm wow, this guy really practiced. This guy's put in the time. And fuck this character, but I can at least respect the player, right? That's just a neat thing to have, and to kind of round out, almost create a culture around your game, if that makes sense. Design-wise, I think she's awesome. I think she's the cool not huge into her hair, but I think the weird top big top thing on her hair. How would I describe it? It's like a it's not a pompadour. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's not my favorite thing, but I think everything else about her design, she's a cool secret agent. I think it's dope. And people would love to have her back, and she was not in 5. Number 18, Minot. Minot is the next up in kind of the new blood sort of representatives. Because she's, a newer character. She's one of the most well-received characters from 5, newer characters, visually and gameplay-wise. Another, really high, skill floor character. But really cool to, see her in action. She's such a stylish-looking character to do combos with. And people, I think, generally like her. And number 1, her appearance, which I am also a fan of, and I don't know, number 2, she's got that the cool gameplay and a cool design. Also, as far as I'm aware, the first kind of like Egyptian character in Street Fighter, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's so. So she's and she is like also like she's like Rose's apprentice or something. Maybe if they bring her back in 6, I would hope that they maybe like make her a little more accessible on like a basic level. But I'd still like her to retain that really stylish high level of like execution, where you're like pressing and holding and then releasing buttons to like make the orbs go, and like it's really cool. Like, you know, keep up your hit stun and all that. Yeah, I don't know, Minot. I think she's a obvious choice. Number 19, G. Another one of the most successful characters from 5. I don't know, great design, very like well received in terms of just his personality is great. He's so just fun to watch him like emote and do things and do this weird act where he's like the president of the world. And he's also like this insane like 7 foot tall like Abraham Lincoln with like ripped sleeves who's like shooting fire from the earth. You're like, what is this guy? And one of the cooler gameplay well, I think like the G was kind of the start of the really cool gameplay concepts in 5, whereas before they were playing it really safe. But G, I think, was a very interesting, his whole idea where he would like level himself up. Like, it's the first time that they really like maybe I'm forgetting something, but it's the first time they really took a character and had them have a very central mechanic that was not tied to the V system. Also, he's apparently going to be probably important in the lore. Like, he's maybe like a potential villain or something like that. He has some connection to Q from 3. Who knows? Like, is he Q? Is he like, did he make Q? Is he like a clone of Q? No idea. But I assume he'll probably come back in some form or another. So yeah, G. Maybe he'll be like I'm P. I'm P now. And then I kind of was thinking of like another. I was trying to think of like, okay, if I had to pick another Street Fighter V rep, it would be Laura or Rashid. And if not one of those two, I would just put in Jury. Maybe Akuma. I don't know. At that point, it's a little up in the air, but I was like, I've settled on 26, and I was like, because it's a round number, or it's like, you know, a nice even number. I was like, you know, I was just trying to come up with stuff. Some of these characters are interchangeable. I'd say the number 20 spot is very interchangeable. Laura or Rashid from 5, I think they were pretty well done. That's it. Even though people are sick of them being good, I think they could. As characters, they're generally well liked. Number 21, Maki. I want Maki back. She's only been in like one game and like CVS 2. She's only been like Street Fighter Alpha 3 and CVS 2. And I just think she's cool. The tonfas are a neat weapon that most other characters don't have. Wait a second. No, hang on. I'll talk about that in a second. It's I don't know. It's a neat weapon. I think her design is cool. I mean, it reminds me a lot of like Mai Shiranui. Really, no other reason than we haven't seen her in a while, and I think it would be neat. It would be fun. I think you need like a certain number of characters in your roster who are just, it's just fun to have them there. It's just neat, you know? Oh, shit. Maki's back. Cool. And then number 22, the reason I was snickering is because I also want Eagle to come back. Eagle is another character who also wields tonfas. Right? Is that specifically what his weapons are, or are they like batons? Because I'm pretty sure... Okay. His skills include golf. Oh, please. Bojutsu, which uses staff. Huh. I don't think it's exactly a tonfa. I can't find the name of his thing. Please tell me. It would be weird to have like two characters with the same weapon. Oh, I just realized he's like a contrast to Birdie. Birdie and Eagle, which are both golfing references. Okay. Weapon. What the fuck is his weapon called? Oh, they're just sticks. He just says sticks. Oh, it's more like Eskrima, a Filipino martial art involving a variety of weapons and open-handed techniques. Yeah, if you go... So Eagle is, for all the way... If you don't know who Eagle is, I should clarify this. If you don't know who... Actually, if you don't know who Maki is from, she is, I think, Cody's sister from Final Fight. And she is playable in, I think, Final Fight 3. And she wields these two, like, tonfa sticks. And she's cool. Eagle is from Street Fighter 1. And he's this British kind of gentleman guy. So I guess we'd have two of them on the roster. And he wields these two sticks. And the only appearance he had besides SF1 was Capcom vs. SNK2, I think. Maybe CVS1, I'm not sure. But he definitely in CVS2. And he's super cool. He's one of the few like new sprites that they made for that game. And his animations are just great. Like him like flipping and like swinging the sticks and stuff like that. And like spinning them around. He's like a really cool, stylish character visually. Almost like slightly like Oswald from KOF. If I had to think like older men, like gentlemen with like cool, stylish animations. I think that he's another character who I would put in the Maki boat of it would just be cool to have them back. Represented. I think it would be a neat way, just like a neat opportunity to have like a visually flashy character. And then I have spots for 3 new characters. Oh, I should go over. Oh yeah, Luke. I forgot to mention Luke. Obviously, Luke's in the game. What do I hope they do with Luke? Well, they fixed his design for the most part. Well, I'll have to see the whole thing, but it's better than 5. I hope that they keep the idea of his gameplay. I hope they keep that consistent and just make it like consistent across the cast. Like a lot of the ideas that he put out in his gameplay, like he has these fast like advancing normals. He's a very like offensive character. But he has like the ability to charge his moves for like a bunch of different combo routes. The problem with 5 is that he's just too good at everything. So I hope they don't carry that over. But the basic premises of that kind of like, I think, underpin his design of having a character who's kind of easily accessible, has like an accessible toolkit with like a high like possibility with like combo routes and things like that, depending on how much you want to familiarize yourself with the character. I think that is generally what I'm trying to say is like easy to learn, hard to master is the I think that's what they were going for with Luke in 5, but well, number one, the problem is that you don't need to master him because he's too good. Number two, and they carry that over to most of the cast with 6. That's it. That's all. That's my hopes for Luke. And then I have three new characters. One of those is like a new crossover character. So, obviously Final Fight. And there's some ones that I would want from Final Fight. I want that clown guy, Felipe. Felipe. Those people also really like Damned. He's like a big wrestler, Hulk Hogan type. Retu from, I think, Final Fight 2 would also be another cool one. He's like this weird, like, I don't know what his costume's based on. I think it's some kind of like Japanese theater thing. His moveset in the game is very boring. I think he just does like spins, but he's like the final boss of Final Fight 2, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of Final Fight characters already. And, it's neat to see more, but I think with Akira joining 5 in the last season of the game, I think, like, opening the door up for Rival Schools characters is great. Because there's so many cool, like, Rival Schools designs. Some quick ones I jotted down was, like, Kyosuke, Batsu, Tiffany. I wouldn't mind Tiffany. Let me just get like a Rival Schools characters. Akira's great. I've been playing a lot of Akira in 5 actually. Daigo's cool. Roy looks cool. Hyo Imawano looks cool. A lot of these characters just have I really like the whole deal they have going on with this sort of mixture of casual and like school clothes with martial arts like crazy combat shit. I love the Rival Schools aesthetic. Zaki looks nuts. That's basically I have no ideas for DLCs, but some of these could be changed up. Like with 26 characters, you could maybe afford to cut a few, but that's my basic overview. Basic overview for what kind of a roster I would put together. My goals being give like a good spread of the series, and with that you get some opportunities to have like the older characters, the newer, like younger characters, some fan favorites that haven't been seen in a while, some kind of, I guess, surprise characters, like having Hugo replace Zangief, and then like some brand new characters from some crossovers with other Capcom stuff. So the idea is like, I think Street Fighter 3 went a little too hard with the new generation thing, and it was too new. But this, I think you could strike a good balance. Excuse me, with passing the torch. So having these, the new kids, right? Sakura, kind of, I guess less so at this point, but Sakura still carries that kind of connotation. Sean, Minot. I think those are like good. Luke is another one. I've heard people talk about like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if like Luke and Sean had some kind of a rivalry, like Luke. I could see like Luke's character going and like, oh, he after he leaves the military, he goes and gets like trained by Ryu, and he and Ken is training Sean. They almost have like their own students get like the same kind of like friendly rivalry or something that Ken and Ryu had. I think that would be dope, actually. I think that would be really neat, and it would kind of be like a neat way to show the almost like lineage of like the like Ansatsuken, the like art, the martial art they practice. It's like, oh, it starts with Goken, and then he trains 2 people, and then they each train like their own like students and stuff like that. And it like partially spreads to like Sakura and characters like that. I think I think it's neat. I'm nerding out over like shitty Street Fighter lore, but yeah. This, in my opinion, I think this is a very fair roster. If you have any objections, I would leave them in the comments. I'm actually curious to know. I love making fighting game rosters in my head is like a pastime of mine. I was coming up with an idea for like a roster for like a Mega Man crossover fighter the other day in the shower. And like move sets and stuff like that. I kind of daydream about like how I would make a certain kind of game, and then I never do it because I don't want to get into game dev, but you know, I have them in like little documents and stuff like that, or just in my head. So real quick, actually, just to go over, so Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, Cammy, Fei Long, T-Hawk, Sakura, Sodom, Sean, Necro, Hugo, Remy, Dudley, Makoto, Sea Viper, Minot, G, Laura, Maki, Eagle, Luke, one new crossover character, and two totally new characters. The Laura spot could also maybe be filled by Akuma, Juri, Rashid, one of those. I just picked Laura, just kind of out of a hat. Yeah, man, my throat is getting tired. I should have gotten a drink with me. I have not really been playing anything super new. Kind of just been grinding away to finishing this video. Now, just between you guys and me, June I'm going to be taking off. I think I've just been getting a little close. I've been getting too close to like burning out on my work recently, which is funny because I switched to the schedule specifically so that I wouldn't burn out. But I'm feeling it. Like every recent video I've been doing this for, close to 6 months now. And every video feels like it's getting closer and closer to the deadline. So, I was thinking like, is that just because I'm burnt out? Like I'm having like just a bit of a struggle to just like actually sit down and do the work. Like I just don't want to. And I'm like, is that because I'm burnt out, or is it because I have bad time management skills, like a bad schedule? I'm like, well, why don't I kill two birds with one stone? Or in other words, do an option select, if you will. And I'll just take like a break for a month, and then when I get back, I'll like get onto commit to a schedule rather than be in this, oh, my sleep's all messed up. Oh, I'm trying to like establish a schedule, and then also like my sleep is messed up, so it's like not working, and I'm getting tired, which means I can't like do the work with the schedule that I want to keep, and it just I don't want to deal with it. I feel like it would just be a pain in the ass. I'll still be doing podcasts, but just between you guys and me, there won't be videos for 1 month, probably. Maybe I'll do something tiny on the side, but yeah, and then I'll see how I feel afterwards. Well, with all that being said, if you've been listening this far, thank you so much for listening to me ramble for an hour and close to 40 minutes. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I will definitely get to them next time, but it has to be phrased in the form of a question, because I'm not just going to read your thoughts out loud. Do I say anything else at the end of these? Not really. Yeah, check out the most recent video on Lupe versus Daigo, which is funny. We had like a fighting game episode and a fighting game episode of the Cellar, so guess what? I think this guy likes fighting games. That one was fun. I'm happy with how that video turned out. Yeah. I don't have anything else to say. Goodbye.